So exciting seeing the boat, and I've just got here and now having a look, and yeah, looking fantastic, really is. I love the colour changingness of the paint too. First viewing of the boat, super exciting to see it. I haven't seen it without the covers on before, and now I actually get to see the hull. We're only about 6 weeks away from the boat being complete, so it's getting pretty close. I'm quite impressed with how much progress there's been and how things are being done. You can certainly see differences from earlier boats to ours, that they've improved just little details and so on. But I'm happy to say there's nothing that's a major roadblock that I can see. I've seen the engines get removed, so that part's being changed. We're changing to bigger engines, which I'm happy with that decision. And just lots of little tiny detail stuff that I'm working on now. But overall, really quite happy with how things are progressing. So, yay.
Just walking through the boat. That's the galley obviously there, where we'll do all our cooking. And then heading down into the starboard hull, which is really the guest hull. So that'll be the guest cabin. It's a big queen size bed in there, and then there's the guest head in there. And then we go forward, and forward is they call it a workshop, but it's also 2 bunk beds as well. So we'll keep tools and so on in here and keep them folded up when we don't have or need extra beds. But they fold out, there's 2 beds, so if we've got extra people aboard or doing ocean passages and so on.
The electronic stuff, there's your battery banks. See if I can climb up in there a bit better. See more of the, since that's the auto fire extinguisher system. There's more up behind me, can't get to that. These are clever. These controllers, the 4 of them there are the DC-DC converters. No, there's no air through there. But that air's going to go up behind them, up to the top, and then should get extracted out the top through this tower. This is our cockpit fridge that we've had specially built when we catch really big fish, or we're having a massive party and we need a truckload of beer. I'm not sure if it's a good idea or a really stupid idea. Time will tell. So this will be the saloon, and then part of the important stuff, the sound system, there's a subwoofer which has been built as a special locker. Totally over-engineered, but should be awesome. And then we've got these ceiling speakers, and we've also done bigger outdoor speakers outside, so they're quite a decent sized. And then there's an amp hidden back under there somewhere as well. These have now got the leather covering on these couple of drawers, and then they go to the veneer afterwards. A nice little detail like that. The carbon trim on all of the drawers. Go forward into the head. And so there's our AC tech space. Now, There's been some debate over things such as that as a handle, which is also hang your towel on. It's obviously all covered in tape. Shower equipment all in, and then you can hang another towel in, but it's huge. Now there's my feet and the amount of space in here. It's quite enormous. That's kind of cool. A little window to look at while you're showering. Probably be better if I was a little bit taller. But that's for the mates to pick on me about. See, out these windows then, I'm the perfect height. It's right at eye level. It's just that you step down into the shower. Lots more nice details, like even the way this sink has been done, which you're then going, hang on a minute, that means that that whole sink is carbon fibre that's then painted, which looks amazing. But it wasn't just that. Where I was actually looking, as I've been looking through all the lockers and trying to understand the detail of some of this stuff. And things like this is where hoses are penetrating through panels, and that's actually a rubber piece around there, so you won't get chafe, or you'll get a lot less wear on the hoses going through sections like that, which is really nice. These are the TV lifters in the middle here, and then these a little bit that we had designed for booze, so your spirits can go in here, and then there's little stoppers on there. But this will be rum, that one will be for rum, and then we've got one on the other side over here as well. And then that one can be for rum, and that one down there, I don't know, maybe we can put something different in there. There could be some gin or some vodka, or maybe some whiskey. Oh, there's the line sorter, which will be below the deck. That's one of my topics I want accessible. Bow lockers, traps. So stiff, I love that. Dirty, but looks cool. That's from these are clever tracks too. I love the fact that they're sculpted like that, so you can crank them back and then they lock in place as you're pulling them back. That's clever. And then nice neat steps. There'll be a mast obviously, but pleased to see these are all the same colour. I noticed on some of the previous boats that there were some few that were different colours. That's a electric line driver for the Traveller. That's a clever detail. These are the blocks for the head fill, which are all neatly wrapped up. But what's clever is having this panel, which fits in flush, but that's EVA versus the solar panels. Clever. One of the things that I didn't really like was that they've left little patches between, and what they can do is they've got what they use like in little sections like here, and it's actually fake solar panels. So it's the same material, but there's no solar under, just these little trim edges. And there's a little trim edge along the side here, like that too. So I've asked them to put that into these empty sections, which will make it look better. Happy with that change. This is the saloon inside the ceiling lining. And these are all the solar controllers to run that entire roof of solar panels. Pretty wild. I was just checking how the bitter end is attached for the anchor rope, and there's a fair bit of anchor rope there. And then that comes through and gets spliced into the chain And then the chain obviously falls on top, and then we've got the anchor winch in there, and on top there's the anchor winch. And a reasonable amount of space for not getting jams and stuff too. And then you can lock it off on that D-ring, goes through there, and then up to the longeron, up the bow, where the anchor is. So this is where the lines all come down the mast or through the deck, and then they get fed through those nice bearing blocks with carbon sheaves, and then they get fed through. That's a special sort of clutch or a cone jammer for the main halyard, and then there's a line through there. You pull at the cockpit and it releases the jammer, and that'll be the main halyard through there. And then they go through line sorters here and back below deck to the cockpit. Interesting, that's the water tank there in the bow locker here. But that's, or not the bow locker, next to the mast. That's obviously the breather that then just drains into the locker here, and the locker drains overboard. Then this is the anchor winch control. It goes in a little sort of bracket there. More clever detail. These are the furling lines that run below the tramp that feed up to the furlers, and then they go through the bulkhead there, come out on this side and go through a box which has then got a spigot underneath, which obviously have a hose on it, which then means any water that comes in should go into this, and I guess there's a cover that goes over the top of that. Then the lines come out of here, and they've got nice, some sort of slidey material, and then you've got the blocks there, and these are all of the sheaves.
While I was at the factory, there also seemed like a great opportunity to mark the anchor chain, and so I've got anchor right chain markers which screw in place in different colours every 10 metres. Seemed like a great system. These are the best I've seen before, so I was happy with how that came together.
Okay, I'm down in the bow locker, in the port bow, and then I've lifted up the floor, which is that panel there. The water makers, zoom out, the water makers in there with the steps going down, but then underneath there's a huge space under here. Interesting. And then there are the filters, which seem like they could be higher. So I'm up in the port bow locker, which is huge. And then looking under the floor is the cover on top, and then that's the bow thruster, which has big hydraulic rams that lift and lower it. It's one serious sized unit. Another detail that I'm quite impressed by that wasn't, none of this stuff was done last time, the size of those hinges on these windows at the front are huge, and the windows are absolutely massive. So the idea will be that you've got a handle on each side that you'll unlock, and then grab that handle and lift these open. It'll be interesting whether you can open them easily from inside. I'll go test that in a second. More detail that I love, and that's like this corking around the edges here, and how absolutely pristine that is. And it's all seems to be like that. That's some of the details that I look for. Being as pedantic as I am will upset me if they're not perfect, but they all seem to be spot on. These are a nice little detail, little carbon panel in there with the steps. Hopefully the anodizing is good enough on these. This is where the shroud's attached, and I have a dynamis strop that goes around there. But this is the part that I hadn't seen before, which is the load sensors. So there's a load pin that goes through here, and you'll be able to see the port shroud loads, starboard shroud loads, and so on. And the idea being that you'll see on one of the displays inside when you're about to start flying a hull, for example, which is pretty clever. And then there's a fairing that goes over the top of these. So I've never seen it without the fairing hiding that. We're swapping the engines over to bigger engines. All of this had all the instruments installed in here, but they're now making a whole new panel to go on the top to cover the fact that the throttle controls are different, which seems like a huge job, but it will be perfect. These are our Beta 38 hybrids that are in at the moment, and to remove the engine they had to pull the back windows out, and that engine is going to fit through there, which is quite amazing. But they're being removed to put bigger engines in that we're going to Yanmar 57s. This is our engines coming out now. They've obviously got lifted through the hatch to get it up in the air, and they've got a metal frame to slide it along. Solid wooden box under there. Press that on. Obviously drop it onto that and then slide it out. Definitely a bit of specialised equipment to make if you ever had to get these out later. Here comes the other engine on its way out. What an amazing process. Starboard, no, port hull. And just looking under the stairs, this is the fuel polishing system, which looks amazing. And in fairness, on 5202 when we were using that, it was amazing. The amount going on is just full on. Guys wiring, we've got guys touching up the paintwork of that cabinetry. Got someone down there polishing the wall. Full on. Nav station in action. There's another variation that I've done. This is a different type of shower. The ones that they supply, you have to twist it to the right temperature each time, which I found hard to use. And then secondly, when it drops in, it doesn't actually lock in place, and water can go in beside it, and then it runs through and it ends up in your Lazarette, with the Lazarette getting wet, which we saw happening here on a really rainy day. This one is quite different, that you dial up, if you can see in there, the red and blue, but you can wind that one way or the other to get the temperature you want. Then once you just keep it on that temperature, push the button to shower to stop, and then it locks in place. Now, if it does fail and it leaks, which we had happen on our old boat, and it leaked and then filled up inside the boat, which was a huge pain in the butt, because we filled it with our own fresh water from our own tank, because it's a pressurised hose. This one's really clever, that we've then added a bag on the back of it, so all the shower hoses in the bag, so it won't get caught on anything or tangled, and then it goes in that waterproof bag, and then that's plumbed in and drains. And they've done an awesome job there. It's actually bolted in place too. So again, really nice detail. For all the debate about the back seat height, I'll see if I can get the camera to show it, but that's about where my back height is. Don't know if that shows it, but it's a pretty good height. like it's pretty comfortable for my back at that sort of height. And I'm a tall person's body with short person's legs. Part of the joy. But that now sits, I've just chosen a different cushion to put there to get, but that's the backs that are going on ours. And they, well, that'll sit lower. It'll sit more like that height, which I think looks better, much better. The boat's all covered up, but I managed to pull up one section, which is a step with the teak work, which looks really nice. I love the light grey caulking, which is nice as a change after our black on the last boat. Miko signage has arrived. Yay. Looking cool.
Went in search of our dusty Dagger boards and stoked to see those. They look sweet. Climbing under the Dagger boards to have a look at the other side. I love the way that they do the paint, that it's completely level with the surface. There's no raise for the paint level. That's pretty neat.
There's our boat in the shed, progressing well, and lots of other boats around standing outside. Here's my mate Dan's boat, which is, I think, going to be next in line. A few more boats there. And then you've got more boats round through there and way back through there. And then all those sheds with boats happening down there too.
This is a variation I really wanted, a backup water pump.
So I've tracked down our mast and just checking all the details of it, and there's some of the stuff's unreal, like these shroud fittings at the bottom, so nicely done. And this is like a ball joint that the mast, this is a ball joint that the mast sits on, which is again really clever. And then other details that I particularly like is these are the strings for the lazy jack bags, but then the lines run through, and then they run through like nice little antel sheaves and then go through to the other side. So if you're on one tack, it pulls one tight versus the other side, which is pretty clever. So a few things we've been talking about in the Lazarette, which I don't know if you can hear me with the microphone, but the drain holes, the connection underneath is much bigger than the hole at the top, so making those bigger will increase drainage. We've also looked at putting the washboards down through that gap through the floor, which would be nice and neat if we can do it.
This is another variation that I wanted, which is a flat false floor in the Lazarette.
So I'm just doing some testing with how the snubbing line works, or the bridle connection works, and that's what you get. You get a snap shackle and you get a Dyneema loop to go around the anchor chain through there. And I'll get Michelle to hold the camera. But the idea being that you go down with your Dyneema loop and then put the Dyneema loop around the anchor chain, which is actually not that hard. I thought that would be hard to do. Connect that on, and then I'll get the snap shackle, which will be coming through the other way. Put that onto the loop, and you're connected. And then lower the anchor, and then when you want to remove it, it's a one-handed job. You can do one hand through here. So, yeah, it's pretty clever. I quite like that.
Part of the process with the HH boats is that they do a soft launch, they call it, where they put the boat in the water, test all the systems, put the rig up and so on, and just check that everything's working as it should while it's in the water, and then they pull it back out and continue finishing off all the details. And our dinghy business is progressing really well too. We've got the first 2 boats made, they've been sea trialled, and they're just about to be shipped off to customers. So that's super exciting. They're going on to other HHs, which is cool. Can't wait. I'm on number 3, so can't wait for ours.